Our guest today is Steve Fifer, and I know Steve from the Saltwater Fishing Club. But you have your history is that's not your only history, is it, Steve?
No, no. I'm very fortunate. You keep hearing the expression "living the dream," and I got a chance to do that in my life. I fished literally about the time I could walk. And I went to work in the fishing tackle industry 2 days after I graduated from college, and I stayed in it my entire career and just retired from it not too many years ago as the director of sales for fishing tackle for Big Rock Sports. The old timers around here remember Big Rock
me.
Sports. Yes.
Henry's, yeah. We
Henry's.
know
As Henry's
we
tackle.
knew the Henry's people for sure.
So I spent years and years and years up to my keister, as it were, in fishing tackle and dealing with people in the industry, and it was a great ride. It was one of the few people. I'm one of the few people I know that could get up in the morning and look forward to going to work.
Well, it's interesting because being the president of the Saltwater Fishing Club, one of the things that you help do is get guest speakers. And I noticed that one of the things that you do is get people that are in the tackle industry, talk and give us talk, and sometimes give us free stuff that they bring.
I have a garage full of free stuff. It's just part. I guess if you're in the chocolate business, you end up with lots of candy around your house. Mm-hmm. That's the way the business is. That's the way it's been these days. I find that the further I get into retirement, though, my cachet decreases.
Yeah,
the amount of freebies that I just happen to get, they disappear. Now it's about killing me, but I have to pay retail for some fishing time.
Yeah. Well, this as we mentioned earlier, that this winter was particularly. And it was probably somehow water temperature related and weather related, but it was a particularly brutal season for particularly saltwater fishing. I'm a saltwater. Well, I've lived in Michigan and in Connecticut, and so I've done both fresh and saltwater fishing. But I'm a fairly persistent saltwater fisherman since I've come to North Carolina. And so my options were less, and other people like you branched out into other areas. And one of the areas is some freshwater panfish fishing for the wintertime to supplement not only your desire to fish, but also get some fresh food.
Oh,
what are some of the fish that this time of year that you fish for?
Well, this time of year when we're pan fishing inshore, we catch a lot more. I'm up to 27 different species I've caught in and around the New Bern area, just fishing for panfish. But when we got in here this morning, I showed you all a cooler full of nice crappies we caught the other day.
They're an interesting fish. They must have a very wide range. And I've caught. A few years ago, I was with a friend that fishes on Lake Okeechobee, and boy, we caught some nice. I caught ones that were over 2 pounds.
Oh,
and so that
crappies, they're very. I think they're in all 50 states.
Yeah,
and on the East Coast, and I don't know if it's true along the Gulf Coast or the West Coast, but on the East Coast, they tolerate brackish water to a pretty extensive range, to extend their range. I mean, it's not unusual when we're fishing for these little panfish to catch a little teeny weeny flounder on one cast, a crappie, a bluegill, a striper, another crappie, a little teeny weeny redfish. It's fun fishing. That's one of the nice things. It's one of the cool things about it.
I've seen that even when we're up in Weldon, up in Roanoke River up in Weldon. We've caught flounder up there. We've caught catfish, caught shad, stripers. I mean, really a well variety of fish. And up there, it's not brackish up in Weldon.
No, that's freshwater.
That's totally freshwater.
It's this brackish water fishery that we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about, you can carry these little tips or whatever that we're going to share all the way. And I personally have done it all the way into Florida, all the way up through Delaware, and I can say, because I've done it, that the fishery in the coastal North Carolina area, particularly around New Bern, is about as, for quality and quantity, is as good as anywhere in the whole country. And I've had the opportunity to test it.
Let's get into some of the nitty gritty on this. Some of the tips. What kind of bait and tackle do you use? And I know people want to know where you go. You give away your spots.
There's no secret in the where. It's another beauty of this fishery. The where is
everywhere.
Ready? Yeah, it's pretty much everywhere. It's I get what's the word? Ubiquitous. Ta-da!
That's a big one. Big one for Monday morning.
The other beauty of the fishery is it's mainly an ultralight fishery. We fish panfish with 5.5, 6, 6.5, mostly 6 and 6.5 foot rods, ultralight rods that are rated for between 2 and 6 pound test line. We typically use 4. The lures we use lures and live bait, and I'll tell you about that in a sec. The lures we use, mainly jig heads, little tiny lead head jig heads.
16th ounce, maybe?
No, that's way too heavy.
Way too heavy.
I have some in my tackle. I should have brought them in. I have some in my tackle box that are 1/80th of an ounce. I typically, the heaviest we'll use is 1/32nd of an ounce. And then I fish with 1/48, and then we put a little teeny weeny soft plastic tube bait, an inch or an inch and a half long. And then on top of those little things, we take, and this is the absolute key, this is the key to life itself, wax worms. Does anybody know what a wax worm is?
Yeah, there's the little mealy worms.
It's a bee moth larva. They're sold at PetSmart as lizard food. Mm-hmm. They're a very, very, very. They're like a bloodworm or a nightcrawler to anybody that fishes in the north central part of the United States. I bumped into a guy fishing underneath the Gales Creek Bridge a couple of years ago. Well, more than a couple of years ago. Turned me on to these things. They're little. They look like a little fat little maggot, but they're not gross. They don't smell. They don't bite. They don't do anything. And you just hook them right behind their little head on that little jig, put it under a little tiny cork, and adjust the depth of the cork to about 3 or 4 feet, and you're ready to go.
What depth of water are you fishing?
We fish. One thing to remember: we fish basically 3 to 10 to 15 feet. But the interesting thing, crappie, they rarely go down to feed. They'll always go up. They eat a lot more minnows than bluegills.
Yeah, I've caught the ones we caught in Okeechobee were on minnows.
Yeah, they eat a lot more minnows than bluegills do. So if you're fishing in 10 or 12 feet of water, if the water depth is 10 or 12 feet, and you're fishing 10 or 12 feet, you probably won't get as many bites as the guy that's fishing the same water, but who's adjusted the depth on their float, so it's about 6 or 7 feet, and they'll come up and eat it. You mentioned the structure.
Right.
The nice thing about it is they're everywhere. Any place, the guiding principle is in the winter. They're cold-blooded creatures. They don't want to expend energy. They hate current. They don't want to be swimming all day. So if you're fishing, say, the Neuse River, and you see a little current as the wind is blowing the water or whatever, there's no fish there. Look for little breaks in the current, dock pilings, bridge pilings.
They sit right behind the piling.
Absolutely. In the slack water, if there's a bonanza area would be a little tiny point of land that you'll see a tidal swirl or a current swirl,
Yeah,
but
little
there's
back
a back
eddies, yeah.
eddy.
Yeah.
Bulkheads, as we get into spawning season, which we're right on the cusp of now, bulkheads are there's lots of them around in the areas that I fish, and the metal ones heat the water, and it makes it attractive for spawning. So bulkheads are the other place to fish.
Now, you mentioned you catch a lot of different species. What are some of the bycatch that you get when you're fishing these little tiny jigs? What size hook is on those jigs?
Most of them are. It varies on the weight, but most of them are 8s. The 132nd are usually 6s, and they're mostly size 8s. And believe it or not, they kind of act like circle hooks. You'd think that the fish would swallow the bait all the time. They don't. You'll catch them right in the lip.
Steve Fifer and catching panfish as an alternative in the wintertime. And Steve, how about some of those spots, locations that people might try?
Well, the specific spots, I kind of, there's lots of those around, but I spend a lot of time fishing the Trent River outside of New Bern, Bryce's Creek off the Trent River. Every inch of that water, the Trent and Bryce's Creek, it holds fish potentially. The upper end of the White Oak River and the upper end of the New River.
How far up?
Way up. Way
Maysville?
up. Well, yeah, from the launching ramps off of 58 to Maysville.
Wow.
On the New River, the state ramp in town, instead of going downstream for trout and whatever, make a left, head upstream several miles, and you're in panfish heaven.
In Jacksonville,
Yeah,
going towards Richlands.
exactly.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Sounds good.
And it's the nice thing about this fishery, in conclusion, it really extends your time on the water. When you get all aggravated at the winter weather, you can't go anywhere, you can do this.
Well, Steve, that picture you showed us at the outset of the show, or before we came on air, of the crappies, I believe they were caught up in the River Bend area of New Bern. Are they easy to clean, the fish?
Yeah, these are big. I skin and fillet these, but most of the time, scale them, cut their heads off, gut them, leave their tails on. Put a couple of scores on each side of the body so they cook evenly. Drop them in hot oil. I use peanut oil. 375 degrees is the key. And then eat the tail first. The tails, fried
Like a chip.
tails, are called southern potato chips.
It's like fish and chips, right?
I'm telling you.
You also brought with you some diagrams of rigs to set up, and Dr. Bogus will put that on his website, NCOIF.
I'll scan them in and put them on for people to use.
I think they'll enjoy that.